definitely amongst the sea of other promoted art, unfortunately. But that's the cost of the pseudo-investigative journalism that YouTubers like me live and die for. Anyway, that's what these accounts do. They comment on artists' work to get them to DM to promote it, at which point they will then offer you a variety of different unbelievably expensive rates that you can pay for them to do so. Some of them, this one included, even promise that you'll gain very specific numbers of followers from being promoted on their accounts, which is something I'll get into more later. The point is, on the surface, these accounts seem to operate somewhat legitimately. You're paying to have your art featured on an account with a large number of followers, and they are posting it. So what's the scam? Well, their followers are fake, and most of the art's stolen, and I can prove it. Let's start with the art, because it's a comparatively much bigger problem than the followers, at least in terms of how it harms artists. So looking back at our good buddy Art Expo's account, we can see that on the surface, all of these seem like they're just pieces of art that artists paid to promote. But if you look a little closer, you can notice a few primary details that suggest that that's not the case. See, look at the post they did for my art. I'm tagged in it. Irrelevant gripe, but I'm tagged in it after 10 spaced out periods in a way that doesn't even give me explicit credit as its creator, which is just fantastic. Anyway, there are more like that, as you can see, where the artist whose art it is tagged in the post. So we can probably safely assume that that's what this account always does for people who pay for promotion. But looking through the rest of their posts shows that the vast majority of them have no artist tagged or credit given. So why not? Well, presumably because they stole the art and reposted it without permission. And because I am the self-appointed art police, I spent a few hours reverse image searching all of them. And I did find a few artists to contact about their work being reposted, like this one, for example. Others, unfortunately, I was unable to source, like these ones. So if you happen to recognize any of them, please either send me their contact info so that I can let them know, or do so yourself, because I don't want to see accounts like this profit, even indirectly, from the theft of their work. But beyond actual art theft, I also discovered another interesting fact. At least 20 of this account's posts are stolen in an entirely different way. While reverse image searching, I found quite a few of the original pieces on Pinterest with a watermark that said Colorscapes. Upon Googling Colorscapes, I learned that this was actually one of those coloring book apps where you are basically given an artist's line work and you can drag color into it like a digital paint by numbers. So I downloaded it to look through its library, and lo and behold, I was able to match the vast majority of this account's content to this app, which means that Art Expo and many other similar accounts, as a quick check showed, is claiming the art from these apps as their own and editing out the watermark that can prove otherwise. This also makes reverse image searching these pieces unbelievably difficult because the colors are different in every rendition of them, so the algorithm for the reverse search can't recognize them nearly as well, if at all. It's actually genius, unfortunately, and also reprehensible. It gives the illusion that either the account is making this art themselves, or has a vastly larger amount of art promotion customers than it really does, and is deliberately erasing the actual artist's credit in the process. And all of that only applies to accounts that even bother to hide it. Others will openly acknowledge that they're reposting artists' work without permission and have descriptions like, email us about copyright issues, or DM us for credit, it's your right, as if that makes them generous, good, moral people. So at this point, we've pretty clearly established that whether it's clear and shameless or a little more deceptive, the art that these accounts post is usually stolen, even if they do have a few legitimately paid, credited, promoted art posts scattered throughout them. Now it's time to establish how the accounts themselves are almost always fake. By fake, what I mean is that the basis of their business is effectively to have a lot of followers, to entice people to promote their art to those followers. The artist only gets actual value from this transaction if the account has a lot of followers. And for the most part, they look like they do. Most of them have a minimum of 5,000 and many have over 200,000, but they aren't real. Some of them might be. In the process of doing research for this video, I came across one that my father-in-law follows, and I'm like 90% sure he's a real human being. But the vast majority are not. Just a quick glance at Art Expo's followers will show you that yes, there are some actual people in there, but there are also a lot of followers that are just first name, last name, and then a number. Those accounts are almost always bots, created with the sole purpose of making these art promotion accounts look like they have a huge following. In many cases, when the accounts do what I mentioned earlier and offer guaranteed numbers of followers from their promotions, they also use these bot accounts to provide those followers. I don't know exactly how it works. Like, some of them might use external services to buy followers for both themselves and their clients, or some of them might have those bots themselves to use for those purposes, but I do know that buying them is cheap as hell and incredibly easy. For context, the service that I found when researching this video lets you buy Instagram followers at rates of anywhere from $3 for 100 to $85 for 10,000 and all the way up to $200 for 25,000. And like, yes, $200 is a lot of money, but $200 to make your account look like it's wildly popular and therefore a promising investment for artists to promote on is nothing, given how much they charge for that promotion. Most art promotion accounts I DM'd charged at least $20 for a single post, with options for multiple posts ranging anywhere from $40 to $130, which means that they could buy themselves a seemingly legitimate and engaged following and pay that off with just a few customers. But how do I know these aren't legitimate and engaged followers? Because they're not engaging. Instagram doesn't show likes anymore, so it's difficult to compare the number of likes their posts are getting to the number of followers that they have, but we can definitely see the comments. Looking at Art Expo again, you can see that the account has over 8,500 followers, as we established, but most of their posts have 0 comments, and at best, some get 3 or 4, often from other art promotion accounts with the infamous DM it to my account to promote it. This is the case for most, if not all, of these accounts, and that is damning enough proof to say that the majority of their followers are fake. And if their followers are fake, and their business is based exclusively on them being real, then their business is a scam. So naturally, I came to that conclusion and decided to give one my money, which was a mistake that I'm still suffering from, as I'll explain in a minute, but it did yield some interesting and informative results. So let's look at those. I DM'd Art Expo asking for their prices, which they provided, as you can see here. I then asked if their promotion packages came with access to the analytics for the promoted posts and stories, so that I could monitor the engagement myself. At which point he sent me a litany of screenshots, which he proceeded to immediately unsend before I could see them. I asked him to resend them, and he sent 3, which just showed screenshots of accounts before and after promotion with a significant increase in followers, which didn't answer my question. So I asked again, and he said yes and asked which package I wanted. I then chose the cheapest package, which came with a post, a story, and 1,000 followers, but specifically requested not to get the followers because, I know they're fake and I don't want fake followers. He agreed to that. I paid him a payment that, interestingly, went to computer network/information services, and he posted the art that I sent him as a story and a post. As you can see from my analytics during this time, I saw almost no increase in engagement as a result of this promotion. As for his analytics, he did not send them on his own despite my earlier request. I asked him to send a screenshot of the post and stories insights, and he asked if I wanted another post promoted. I said no, just the analytics. He said okay, and then never sent them. I asked again. He sent me a screenshot of the post that showed that it got 3,020 likes and a whopping 2 comments. I asked again because that's not the goddamn analytics, and he finally said, "You wait some time." I'm guessing this reluctance and then postponing is because he knew that no one saw the story or post and he needed a hot minute to send his bots to go look at it. That's not really a guess, actually, because after I waited some time, he sent the analytics and those pretty much proved it. Because unfortunately for our boy art_expo_whatever, showing the analytics for one story actually shows the number of views the previous stories got as well. So I got to see the number of views all 4 of his most recent stories, mine included, received. Every single one of them got exactly 8,921 views. I don't think that can even vaguely be excused or written off as coincidence. You can also see that every single one of the viewers shown in his screenshot was a first name last name number account, which we've established are bots. Based on all of that alone, I was and still am very confident in asserting that my awful little experiment has proven that these accounts are scams and their followers are fake. So I thanked Art Expo and called it a day. And then he started asking me how I liked his result and to promote more art, and inexplicably just sent me a screenshot of his follower list, even though I had long since stopped responding. He also started liking all of my posts, just in case he wasn't already being as hard to ignore as my cat at dinner time. It was also around this time that I started getting DMs from other art promotion accounts saying, "Oh hey, I saw you got this promoted. How much did you pay for that, and how many followers did you get?" Clearly leading up to trying to sell me on their promotion services as being better, which was all very fun. Had a great time. Loved it. Awesome stuff. It still hasn't stopped either. Art Expo DM'd me just, "Hi friend," and nothing else the other day. And then a few days later sent me my own post and said, "You need to get this promoted on my account." So it looks like business is not booming for our poor little scammer friend. Tragic. Maybe I'll send him this video and see if he's interested in promoting it on his story. But all that in mind, I hope I've done an adequate job explaining to you guys why all of these art promotion accounts are scams, because God knows I have paid dearly to do so. Not just the actual money, mind you, but the headache of dealing with this asshole and all of the following assholes trying to vulture their way into a quick buck. Don't promote your art on these accounts, guys. Just don't do it. It's a nightmare that never ends, and I hope that in making this video, I've prevented at least one artist from making this mistake, or given you guys some misery to laugh at, if nothing else. Whatever works. You can also avoid getting these comments by blacklisting certain terms, like promotion, for example, in your Instagram settings, so you should look into that if you want to just stop seeing them, because, I personally tend to just respond no in creative ways, because it brings me amusement, but even that gets tiring eventually, and seeing them is just, I don't know anyone who doesn't find it irritating.
Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Special thank you as always to channel members Hey guys, it's Celestia, and in today's video, we're going to be getting into the massive art theft problem on Etsy that no one seems to be talking about, at least not loudly enough to make them do something about it. We all know I'm way louder than I have any right to be, so hopefully I can contribute that obnoxious volume to something productive. Before we do get into all of that though, I want to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Gaomon. I've reviewed one of their tablets before, the PD1220, but this month they've reached out again to offer me the opportunity to also review the PD1320, which is largely the same but almost 2 full inches bigger. Just like before, I'm not surprised to say that I was impressed. It's a pen display tablet and not just a pen tablet, which means that you can see your art on the tablet itself as you draw directly on it. And that is absolutely my favorite kind. It has a matte finish, which prevents glare and lets you see what you're drawing perfectly clearly, and also allows for a more pen on paper feeling, which I love. It has a headphone jack too, so you can easily and seamlessly listen to the Mom Spaghetti remix of Lose Yourself while you draw. It has a nice combined cover and stand so that you can prop your tablet up and draw without giving yourself scoliosis. And while the tablet itself doesn't have express keys, which is a tragic loss for me specifically, the pen does, and is also lightweight and battery free. Finally, it's easy to install, the screen colors are easily customized and very vibrant, the drawing process is perfectly smooth and lag-free, which is a deal breaker for me, and its relatively small size makes it the perfect traveling workstation for your art. Thank you so much to Gaomon for letting me try it out, and you can find this tablet as well as their information in the description below. You can also enter for a chance to win this one by commenting "Art School puts the pain in painting" in the comments below, in addition to your preferred method of contact if you win. And the winner of the Gaomon PD1320 will be decided on November 1st, 2022 by way of random number generator. The winner will then have 72 hours to respond to my reply to their YouTube comment or other designated method of contact to claim the tablet, otherwise the winner will be redrawn. Also, unfortunately in this case, only those in North America can participate as the tablet is rather heavy and I just can't afford international shipping as this is coming out of my pocket. All of that out of the way, let's get into something much less fun and good. Etsy. More specifically, the growing art theft problem on Etsy that Etsy is doing almost nothing to fix. For context though, let me tell you a little more about the platform itself and its history. Back in 2005, Etsy was founded, and it was founded with one very particular goal in mind: to provide independent artisans creating handmade goods with a place to sell those goods. Its focus was abundantly clear. It was an e-commerce platform specifically for individual artists and crafters selling stuff they made, rather than companies selling mass-produced goods. And for a while, that seemed to be a quality standard that they did uphold. They did so well, in fact, that both their success and their platform grew immensely. And eventually, in 2013, they announced that they would revise their policies and begin allowing the sale of non-handmade, mass-produced goods. This decision was widely regarded as the beginning of the end for their platform. Not for their success or profitability, which would be pretty much exclusively positively impacted by the decision, but for the artists they built it for. Now, I have a lot of mixed feelings about that. On one hand, I am someone who probably wouldn't be able to use Etsy for my merch if it weren't for this policy change, because I use Printify to manufacture and ship it, which qualifies it as mass-produced and not handmade, even if I did make the designs for it myself. Etsy's policy change is actually very helpful and empowering for artists like me, as it allows us more freedom in terms of the ways that we can sell our creations. But others argue that this decision created unfair competition for the small artists that had built their businesses on this platform, because now they have to compete with the lower prices and faster production times of big businesses that are being deceptively marketed as just as handmade as their own stuff. And I won't lie, I agree. I completely understand the frustration with that, and I get that this decision did both harm and good to the artists on the platform. So I can't say one way or the other whether or not it was the right decision to make. What I can say though is that the way they've handled the aftermath of that decision is a little dishonest. What I mean is that while they've basically said, now we're effectively just a normal e-commerce platform like any other, they're still marketing themselves as the same handmade, artisan-focused small business haven. Their mission statement is "Keep Commerce Human." In the second sentence of their About page, they advertise their specialty for handcrafted pieces, and then go on to advertise that their priority is maintaining the human connection in commerce by promoting the sale of goods that were specially made with a human touch and special one-of-a-kind items. All of this is coded to suggest to potential buyers and potential sellers alike that this is still a platform specially made for handmade goods, which is a carefully curated marketing ploy designed to separate them from alternatives like Society6 and Redbubble, and even eBay and Amazon. So people come to Etsy with trust that Etsy itself once actually legitimately established, that their priority is still the little guy, and with the expectation that the goods sold there are at least mostly handmade. And for a while that probably was the case. When they first changed their policies, the marketplace was probably still very artist-driven, with big companies and mass-produced goods only gradually trickling in. But looking at it now, it's hard to ignore that that's no longer true. They trickled in a lot, and now what's actually sold on Etsy isn't mostly handmade. It's mostly mass-produced. And it's marketed to make mass-produced look handmade. Another problem with that mass production is that it makes it really, really easy to steal art and sell it on merch, especially given how easy dropshipping companies are to use. It's something that's been a known issue on Redbubble and Society6 for a very long time, and the reputations of both platforms have suffered as a result. Etsy's, conversely, benefited from their reputation suffering, despite the fact that while people weren't talking about it nearly as much comparatively, their own platform was becoming increasingly overrun by the exact same problem. It's actually interesting to consider that that might be the reason. Like, maybe a part of the reason people aren't talking about the art theft on Etsy is because they still work so hard to retain their reputation as handmade first. You don't naturally associate the ability to steal and sell art with a platform known for selling handcrafted goods, like you would with a platform that allows you to put art on dropshipped, large-scale manufactured merch. It's just another way that they're benefiting from their dishonest and misleading marketing, at least in my opinion. And it's something that I fell for myself, in all honesty. Subconsciously, I still had that handmade preconception in my head. It's not that I was unaware of their policy change, obviously, or completely oblivious to the fact that mass-produced corporate goods were being sold on the platform. I was just under the naive impression that most of the people selling anything not handmade were like me, artists putting their handmade work on non-handmade merch. I had no idea how bad this problem was until I actually encountered it myself, when my wife showed me this really cute mousepad Etsy listing, and I immediately recognized the art from my art inspiration board on Pinterest. As you can see just from looking at the art, it's made with a very distinct and recognizable style, so it wasn't hard for me to see that and think, I don't remember the exact piece I've seen from this artist, but I know this artist. So when she sent me the listing and the store was full of other listings with work that definitely didn't match that style, I went to the aforementioned Pinterest board where I knew I'd saved some of that artist's work, found that work, and reverse image searched it to very easily find their Instagram, Apricot Mare. And the first things I saw were the pieces that were stolen and put on mousepads, and an Instagram story saying the following: "Hi everyone, I never sell mousepads, large table mats, or phone cases at Alibaba, AliExpress, Taobao, or Etsy. If you saw one of them, please help me report them, because I couldn't do this without you. Thank you." And I was furious. I was furious that this was apparently such a common reoccurring problem for them that this story was necessary at all, and furious that Etsy, a platform that I really thought was better than allowing it, was clearly allowing it to happen for them personally so much that they had to list it with the other platforms. I reported the listings that I recognized as theirs, reported the store, and DM'd them to let them know. But Etsy quickly told me that since the art wasn't mine and I didn't represent the artist, they wouldn't do anything, even if I could prove it, and that the artist had to report it themselves. I couldn't even fill out the IP infringement report form, and the artist didn't see my DM, so they couldn't know to report it, which meant this highly profitable store with over 1,500 sales and an almost 5-star rating was left to continue selling their work. Etsy was also promoting these stolen listings heavily off-site because they were so popular, to the point that my wife saw them many more times on her social media, as did I. I've since made an Instagram story about it to try to get their attention, as well as emailed them, so I'm hoping that they do see it and report it eventually, but as of writing this, that's not the case. So then I contacted Etsy directly to ask if there was anything I could do. They took a week just to say no and send me their IP infringement policies that I'd already read, all of which reflect that only the artist or a third party representing them can report stolen art. Even if Etsy themselves had undeniable proof that it was stolen, which I provided them, unless that proof came from the artist, they would acknowledge that it was stolen and just let it continue to be sold anyway. Even Redbubble has a section of their policy that says they reserve the right to, without a report from the artist needed, remove any content that they believe to be infringing upon another person's intellectual rights. But Etsy, the platform that claims to protect independent artists' rights first and foremost, won't take any such initiative. After learning that, I contacted Etsy's press team for a media statement, statement seeking some kind of explanation for how and why they found this justifiable. I got one email back saying that I had definitely contacted the right person for media segments, but said literally nothing more than that. So I replied with the initial message I already sent in hopes that they would reply. I followed up 3 more times over the span of months. Never heard anything from them again. And apparently that's a recurring theme with them, because even when the artists who have their work stolen and sold on Etsy do report these listings themselves, Etsy still doesn't make it anywhere near as easy as it should be for them to get them taken down. More often than not, Etsy says, "I'm sure you can resolve this yourself. Just contact the thief directly and ask them real nice to stop stealing, please." Which is just beyond ridiculous. Like, really? Appeal to the thief's strong moral compass? Ask them to do the right thing after they build a business on doing the wrong thing? What a goddamn joke. And if you tell them no, can you please handle theft on your own platform yourself, Etsy? Pretty please. You often get an insanely slow, long, dragged out process where they make it abundantly clear that they don't care and are just hoping you'll decide it's not worth it. They also force you to straight up DMCA the thief, which gives them your full legal name and address, which is not something you want a thief to have. Sometimes they'll also just reject reports of IP infringement inexplicably, even if you've provided proof that the art is yours. And from what I've read from the experiences of others, they don't even tell you why. And yet when I listed my $7 Death Note button set, I got a copyright takedown notice within 4 hours, because while Etsy won't help small artists get listings that steal their art removed, they sure work real fast when Eric Green decides that my tiny fan-made buttons are stealing business from Viz Media. I can't conclude this video though without acknowledging that this problem is an inevitability on all e-commerce platforms. People are assholes, and copyright law itself is more to blame than Etsy itself is. Copyright law is what's broken, and it's the reason that Etsy and so many other platforms so frequently have their hands tied when it comes to policing art theft. More than anything, it is what needs a drastic, thorough overhaul. It needs to be easier to report stolen art, but we can't reasonably blame Etsy for the law's failure to allow that. And I think it's important to give credit where credit's due and acknowledge that not only are they not responsible for the underlying problem, they are at least trying to fight it, at least according to them. All of that being said, they should be held responsible for their failure to fight it harder and fight it right. Like I said, even Redbubble's policies let them take independent action against art theft, even if it is worded in a way that suggests that's probably not something they do often. That suggests that if they cared to, they probably could rework their own policies to protect artists' rights better. And the longer they go without doing so, the more stores like Kitty Accessories are going to find success exploiting them on a platform that's supposed to be designed for them. Even beyond that, the way they handle the reports they do get from IP owners themselves is a huge problem. Independent artists and small business owners should not have to wait months on end to have their stolen work removed, while representatives from huge industry IP owners can enforce their IPs on fan art within hours. Etsy's default first response should not be, handle it yourself. Etsy is a platform that has the trust of a lot of artists because they used to earn it. And as a result, they have a responsibility to uphold the standards they're preaching for artist protection and small creator-friendly values much, much better than this. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that after finding this stolen art on Etsy that is still for sale right now, I found 20 more listings like it when I went looking. I'm disappointed that Etsy is failing the very people that it once sought out to help and support. I think the pop artist on Etsy's forums sums it up best. Perhaps I am naive, but I thought Etsy was founded on the concept of promoting the artisans and craftspeople who handcraft their items with originality and pride. I mean, that's the image they try to sell the public to drive them to their site. I thought they might want to take a lead in this fight against copyright infringement, something that is just rampant in the arts community. But I guess they're only selling an image, and we're just the suckers playing along. I still think Etsy can do better. I definitely think they deserve a chance to, but I think more people need to talk about and bring attention to the fact that based on the virtues they so strongly promote, they are failing artists much more than sites like Society6 and Redbubble by allowing this problem to be so pervasive on its platform. And I think that maybe if we do, they'll step up their game when it comes to stopping it. Unfortunately, there's very little else that we can do in the meantime, aside from just try to protect our own work and look out for the artists whose work we've seen stolen. Watermarking your art helps, but it's still far from impossible to edit those out with minimal artistic skill needed. Doing what Apricot Mare did and making an Instagram story or other form of pinned social media post, letting people know that your work isn't being sold anywhere but where you yourself are selling it, will also help them help you if they see it being sold illegally. You can also reverse image search your own work to see if it's been reposted anywhere you didn't post it, but that's not always always effective, especially if they overlay it onto a product mockup like those mouse pads I showed you earlier. And if you see an Etsy store or other kind of online store with listings that reflect a million different art styles like kitty accessories, whose wider stock I'll show on screen now, question that. Look into it. Try reverse image searching the art that they're using, and see if you can find the original artist or artists that are probably being stolen from, and let them know so they can report it. We've really only got each other here if Etsy won't help, so we pretty much have to have each other's backs. Anyway, that's all for now. If Etsy makes any significant changes to warrant an update, I'll make a follow-up video at that time, and I hope I do. I hope we see those changes soon, and I hope I can give you guys something more positive as a conclusion. But right now, we need to press them for those changes and speak up about how necessary they really are. Thank you guys.
Hey guys, it's Celestia, and I don't even know how I'm supposed to start this story time, honestly. As a lot of you know, if you've been following me and my channel for a while, I'm agoraphobic as a result of very severe PTSD, and am subsequently unable to leave my home for long periods of time, which to me is over an hour, or at all, and only to locations that I'm familiar with and feel safe in. Even then, I'm still liable to have a panic attack simply as a result of being out of my safe space. And for that reason, I tend to just stay at home, where I'm safe and relatively stable, because it's terrifying to feel that you could be rendered completely incapacitated by your own anxiety and panic and fear just because you went out. But I've been trying really hard to work past this in therapy, and part of that means exposure therapy. Basically, doing the thing you're phobic of despite the fact that you're phobic of it in small and safe increments. And for me, based on my therapist's recommendations, that has meant trying to force myself to go out to places close to me, like quiet bars and coffee shops, to get myself used to interacting with society and the world again. She thinks it'll help me eventually learn to recover, and that's exactly why I went to this lovely restaurant/bar last month and prompted this story time to happen. And this story time happening is exactly why I will literally never leave my house again. That's an exaggeration. I understand that I will eventually need to try exposure therapy again, and I understand that staying inside forever isn't a reasonable solution here. But as someone who was already terrified of the risks associated with going out, and just had all of those risks and fears verified and confirmed as realistic and possible, once again, it's really hard not to feel that way and lean into that belief. Anyway, before I get into what actually happened, I would like to give a trigger warning for intoxication, alcohol, and non-consensual drugging. I will go into as little detail as possible, and there was no incident to discuss following those events, but if those topics as a whole even vaguely disturb you, I would recommend clicking away now. With that out of the way, let's talk about what happened. Last month, I went to the aforementioned restaurant/bar following a recommendation from a friend who said that because I love good sake, I would love it there, as their selection of it is extensive. And I mean, in that way, they were absolutely right. It was a lovely place and their sake was incredible. And if what happened later on never happened, I would probably have loved to go back sometime. In fact, I actually texted my wife really excitedly that I thought I might have found a safe place that I could try to go to regularly after spending the first 4 hours of my evening working on a script and an art piece and just enjoying the good vibes. I wasn't drinking heavily by any means, because doing so would have defeated every purpose of my going there. Number 1, I was trying to finish my work, which being drunk would have made difficult. Number 2, I was only drinking at all because I wanted to try out some new kinds of sake. And 3, while a few drinks will put me at ease while I'm out of my house, being drunk outside of my house is terrifying for me. Because my weight is so low as a result of my illness, I do sometimes miscalculate my tolerance and end up drinking too much, simply because at a healthy weight, I would have been able to handle it no problem. But I am confident that this was not the case here, because I finished a completely error-free script and paced myself very slowly. I was completely clear-headed, albeit a little tipsy at worst, for the entire duration of the evening, until very suddenly I wasn't, but we'll get to that. I had gotten there at around 4 p.m., at which point it was pretty chill and quiet, but it started getting really busy at around 10. I was sitting at the bar and working on my iPad, and had just finished the script and started working on the art piece, when some guy sat down next to me and almost immediately started talking to me. I gave him short one-word answers with the forced politeness but blatant disinterest of every uncomfortable woman that does not want any part of an interaction, hoping he would take the hint, but he did not, and he just kept going.
He wasn't being like overtly creepy or overbearing, nor did he look or seem creepy, but he was not letting me sit there in silence like I very clearly wanted. He wasn't trying to invade my personal space or anything, he wasn't being an asshole, and he wasn't getting annoyed with me for not engaging much in the conversation. He just ignored that I wasn't engaging in the conversation because he wanted to talk. And that was not what I had gone there for, so I did not, and really would have loved it if he had just gone away, which he refused to do with the persistence of a mosquito. Unfortunately, as I had been there for hours at that point and had not yet used the bathroom, it was around this point when it was becoming apparent that I would have to soon. Especially because while I was planning on leaving soon, I was also planning on walking home, which was a 45-minute walk. And 45 minutes is a long time to desperately have to pee. It would have been smarter for me to go to the bathroom on the way out, but I still had a full drink left because I was drinking so slowly, and forgive my crassness here, but I didn't want to spend those last 30 or 40 minutes it would have taken me to drink it desperately trying not to piss myself, so I went to the bathroom. But while I may have limited recent experience with the world as a whole as a result of my agoraphobia, I did have quite a bit of experience with it before, and even if I didn't, I'm also not generally a dumbass, so I realized the danger of leaving my drink unattended. I got the attention of one of the nearby bartenders and asked her to please watch my drink and my iPad just for a minute, because I was gonna rush right to the bathroom and back so as to not put her out or take up her time. She agreed, and I left. Now, what's weird is that the bathroom is the last thing I remember clearly. I don't even fully remember coming back to the bar, although I do remember the panic of seeing that the bartender had left to do something else, and both my iPad and drink were unattended. I should have left as soon as I saw that, honestly. I should have looked at that and looked at the guy still sitting beside me and thought, it's not worth it to finish this drink, and I should have gone home. But the thing with me is that both of my major mental illnesses, being PTSD and schizophrenia, along with the agoraphobia resulting from both, caused me a lot of paranoia. And because the point of the evening was to try and fight my paranoia and not let it control me, I was adamant that this was just another thing I was being too paranoid about, and that if I let that fear stop me from finishing my night how I planned, I would have failed at the exposure therapy I had gone there for. So while I don't remember finishing the drink, I know that I did, and that one stupid f***ing decision made the night take a very scary turn. Like I said, my memory of what happened next actually stops before I even got back to my spot and finished the drink, which I found really odd in retrospect, but is apparently typical of the type of drug that people usually put in people's drinks in these situations. And if it was at all unclear, I am 100% confident that that's what happened. The guy who had been bugging me roofied me. Anyway, it's a little hard to piece together what happened after I got back from the bathroom as a result of that memory loss, but my iPad keeps track of how long I use certain apps, and based on how long it says I kept using Procreate and the time that I went to the bathroom, I was able to determine that I kept drawing for a little over 15 minutes afterwards. The art itself is actually one of the most disturbing aspects of this for me, and it's what really solidified for me that I absolutely was drugged, because it's wrong. It's not like the lines were sloppy, they were distorted and strange and blocky, and in places looked like I had inexplicably stopped picking up my pen as I drew and just tried to finish the line work in one long stroke. And I know myself. I have drawn while completely shit-faced more than once, and I've never had a problem with it. It has always looked normal, albeit a little sloppy or messy in places, and I have never seen myself create anything that looked remotely like this looked. I'll show one example of it on screen. This is a much tamer example, because from what I can gather, I stopped working on this piece after this little snippet here, and started working on a brand new one, which was much worse. I wish now that I had kept it to show here, but when I saw it the next morning, I started crying, and I deleted it on impulse. I wasn't thinking about keeping it for a video. I wasn't thinking about a video at all. I was so ashamed that this had happened to me and that I had let this happen to me, that I had no intention of ever talking about it to anyone. I'll get into why that changed later, but the point is that seeing that piece just broke me a little bit, because accidentally drinking too much couldn't explain that. Not at all. And seeing visual evidence like that just, I couldn't handle it. Anyway, I got back to the bar and apparently kept drawing for 15 minutes, which was presumably how long it took me to finish my drink, because my banking app says that I paid shortly after that. I have no way of knowing whether or not the guy had kept talking to me throughout this time, but I do distinctly have one flash of a memory where he grabbed my arm and told me he would drive me home, which I'm guessing stood out because I was just so scared. Like, I'm so phobic of being touched that even my family knows to ask permission to hug me. So for this dude that I'm already scared of to do it that aggressively and suddenly, it's not a huge surprise that that memory stood out. I don't know what happened after, but I know I didn't go with him and presumably managed to get away and leave the bar. One of the bartenders confirmed this when my wife came looking for me later on. The next thing I remember is stumbling down the street trying to get home, but I couldn't walk and I kept falling, and it was like, it didn't feel like being drunk. It felt more like how I felt when they gave me sedatives before medical tests and procedures. And that really scared me because I was too mentally out of it to realize I had been drugged. So I was just terrified and confused and unable to understand what was happening to me. I couldn't figure out how to work my phone either. Like, I knew I needed to call an Uber, but my brain couldn't figure out how to find or open the app. What probably saved my life, or at least saved me from something very bad happening, was that I had texted my wife from the bathroom at the bar, and the messages app was still open as a result. So I was able to incoherently text her for help. I couldn't really understand her responses, so I didn't know if help was coming or not, which left me still trying to stumble down the street before eventually just sitting down on the sidewalk and crying. The area I was in has a very busy nightlife, and despite the fact that this was a Wednesday night, I still remember there being a lot of people passing by and walking around. And I remember desperately trying to ask them for help, but the only word I could actually get out was help. And while most of them ignored even that, I couldn't even explain it to those who did stop and ask what I needed, because I couldn't make the words work. I couldn't put them together right or even understand their meaning through the brain fog, and I didn't even understand what was happening to me well enough to tell them, even if I could have. So I just sat there, helplessly staring at them, at which point they presumably assumed I was homeless and high and kept walking. One of them actually spit on me and said something that I couldn't understand despite the fact that I knew it was English, but I'm guessing it was some kind of an insult based on that same assumption. Eventually my wife came and got me, and she took me home and took care of me. I was still really incoherent and not making much sense, but she managed to get me into bed where I finally passed out. Apparently I ended up getting up and stumbling around in the middle of the night to start examining household objects like they were foreign to me, and she says that, for context, we're pagan, and as a result, we have a lot of ingredients kept in small glass bottles for use in certain rituals and practices. She says that at one point, I picked up one of those bottles and just started staring at the ingredients inside. I do normally sleepwalk and have very persistent and severe night terrors and sleep paralysis, so me doing weird stuff in my sleep isn't unheard of. But she says that I have literally never done anything like that before, and that I normally just scream and sprint to the bathroom to hide from whatever my sleeping brain has conjured up. This kind of behavior was completely different from anything she can ever remember me doing before. The morning after was really, really hard. At first I thought I had just inexplicably gone from perfectly lucid to blackout drunk as a result of my weight, and that was why I couldn't remember anything and had this headache and nausea and brain fog. But as my wife and I started piecing the night before together and arrived at the timeline I just explained, we quickly established that that was obviously not the case. And there was a lot of shame for me at that point. I felt so embarrassed and ashamed that I had let this happen to me, that I was stupid enough to put myself in that position, that so many strangers had seen me completely incapacitated and unable to function, that I had put my wife in a position to have to come and get me and take care of me. There was just so much shame. I wanted to curl up and die from that alone, and I just so desperately wanted to forget that it happened and have everyone else forget too. The last thing I would have considered at that point was making a goddamn storytime video about it, but there are quite a few reasons that I changed my mind that I'll explain in a minute. Anyway, the shame, as overwhelming as it was and still is nothing compared to the fear. Like, I was already terrified of leaving my home because my PTSD has so deeply and thoroughly infected my brain with the belief that doing so will lead to me being hurt or endangered. And the first time in a long time that I forced myself to go out anyway to prove it wrong, I got roofied. It immediately reaffirmed everything I was already afraid of. And I still don't know how I'm supposed to get past that. I'm trying so hard to think about this rationally and recognize that what happened will not happen every time I go out. But there are just no words to express the amount of pure terror this whole thing has instilled in me. I think about it every time I open my door. I think about it every time I have to go out for groceries. I think about it every time I turn down offers to go out with friends. I am constantly thinking about it, and it has made everything so much worse for me long term. And like I said, I wanted to forget that it ever happened. I didn't want people knowing about it because I didn't even want to know about it. But the more I kept thinking about it and obsessing over it and talking it through with my wife, the more I realized that it's something more people should know about.
Because being roofied for a lot of people is something that only happens to other people. It only happens at crowded clubs or seedy bars. It's only done by outwardly creepy dudes who look creepy and dangerous. It's only done to girls dressed provocatively. But I was wearing a normal sweater and shorts. I was in a very upscale restaurant, and the guy that I'm very sure did it was the kind of well-dressed and well-groomed that made me think that he and his nice polo shirt and expensive sunglasses probably drove a Porsche and made six figures. And I want as many people as possible to look at that and this whole experience and realize that this can happen anywhere, to anyone, and at the hands of anyone, even if where they are or how they're dressed or who they're with makes it seem unlikely based on society's perception of how people end up getting drugged. I want this to be talked about as much as possible because I got really, really lucky. Other than a lot of shame and a lot of re-traumatizing, I was fine. I had a really bad headache, nausea, and brain fog the day after, as well as an insane amount of muscle weakness and weird muscle spasms. But I got away from the guy responsible and I got home safely. For a lot of people, that is not the case. Much worse things could have happened to me, and much worse things do happen to people everywhere in this position. And I want to bring as much attention to that as I can so that even one person doesn't end up like that. Try not to go out alone. And if you do, don't ever leave your drink unattended, even if you ask someone to watch it. Because just like this bitch bartender didn't watch mine when she said she would, you just can't trust a stranger to do so. Always make sure someone knows where you are if you're out alone and when to expect you home, or at least expect a text from you. And if you're ever in a position like I was where you realize your drink was left unattended and you think you're being too paranoid or it's just too unlikely that anything happened to it, you're not being too paranoid. You're being just as paranoid as you should be, and you should err on the side of caution and get another drink. Paying however much for a replacement is worth keeping yourself safe. And I guess that's really all there is to say here. This was a horrible experience that I wish I'd been smart enough to avoid, and I still hate myself and berate myself for not doing so. Please take this story time as a reminder to do everything in your power to stay careful and safe, even when your circumstances or environment seems safe enough that carefulness is unnecessary. It's not. There is no such thing as too careful. And I don't mean to be fear-mongering or suggesting that you should all stay inside forever like I do, because that's obviously not a solution. And you shouldn't not live your life how you want to, just because some things are dangerous or risky. I just mean that whenever possible, be more careful about doing those things than you think you need to be, because it might be more necessary than you think it is. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and special thank you as always to channel members Cafe Soleil, Joseph Solomon, Unknown Code, Abyss Reborn, Dolph, and Lucian Izapa, as well as patrons Batman, Kyle Lowe, Blue Swanson, This Is Totally My Name, Unity, Cora Fear, Jamisha Walker, and Hey guys, it's Celestia, and in today's video, we're gonna be talking about the reasons that people think, and please hear this in the voice of the awful high school art teacher that I'm sure you all had, anime isn't real art. To be clear, I mean the anime art style, not actual anime as a form of media, as the latter is generally under much less scrutiny by the art world simply because so many within it write it off as cartoons for kids and leave it at that. But while it's easy to dismiss those art teachers saying anime isn't real art and say, okay, well, you're wrong, and move on with your life, it might actually be of some value to still question why they're saying it in the first place. I mean, if you search art teacher anime on YouTube, you'll find story times upon story times talking about that creator's experience with being told the same things by their supposed mentors. And their comment sections will be full of other artists telling similar stories of their own. So while we can write off all of those art teachers as being assholes along with the rest of the fine art world that shares their belief, I think it's worthwhile to think about where that belief comes from, given just how prevalent it really is. So let's talk about it, and hopefully in doing so I can provide some validation to all of the young anime artists about to go back to high school this month and hear the bullshit spewed at them for a whole new year. First, let's just be crystal clear here. Anime is far from the only style of art that faces this kind of ridiculous scrutiny from art purists seeking to define what is and isn't art. It wasn't the first and it won't be the last. Abstract art was amongst the first genres to fall victim to it. Critics claimed that if art was supposed to be an artist's interpretation of reality, and abstract was, by very nature, intended not to depict reality, then it wasn't real art. Still to this day, the fine art world continues to fight with itself over whether or not that's true. Some with respectful, informed debate, and others by throwing around the words meaningless, nonsensical, and my kid could do that.
The art of comics and graphic novels was soon to follow, being dismissed as childish, for kids, oversimplified, over-stylized, and a sensationalized and commercial form of art that shouldn't be taken seriously. Then came digital art, which artists and art critics everywhere were quick to jump on as being not real art, because it had no actual, physical, tangible form, and because it was too easy to create with all of the tools that digital art programs provided. And don't get me started on not safe for work art being called not real because it's fan service or sleazy or requires no skill because so long as you're drawing boobs, they don't need to be drawn well. Or fan art being called not real because it's not the artist's original character and is therefore just an unoriginal ripoff. There are a million instances of this happening, and unfortunately there will probably be a million more. I've made multiple videos discussing the legitimacy of digital art to fight back against people claiming that it's not real art. And I stand by those, which are linked in the description and the iCard above, because I still feel that the points I made were perfectly valid. But in time, I've come to realize that in presenting those arguments, I was missing the bigger picture. I was arguing within the confines of art purist mentalities, not outside of them. I was trying to convince people who believed in policing and limiting the definition of real art that digital art should fall under the protection of their criteria for it. But I should have been arguing against the existence of that criteria to begin with. I shouldn't have been saying, based on your definition of real art, here's why digital art should be considered real. I should have been saying, who gave you the right to define real art at all? And that's what this all comes down to for me. It's why abstract artists are still being shunned in so many fine art circles. It's why digital artists aren't even being considered in fine art circles. And it's why art teachers are telling impressionable kids that anime isn't real art. It's because art can't be defined, but everyone is trying to define it anyway. And everyone thinks that their definition is right, and that everyone else's work should be judged by it. To me, the question is no longer how to defend art against the criticism that it doesn't fit the criteria for being real, but rather why we're so adamantly trying to define that criteria at all. But before we get into discussing those reasons and whether or not there's value to pursuing or considering them, let's talk about the overarching question still looming over the whole topic. Is there any definition of art that we can all agree on? Well, there's no shortage of options. Some say that a work of art is the selective recreation of reality for the purpose of communicating some aspect of what it means to be human or how we perceive the world. Others say that art is considered to be the process or product of deliberately arranging elements in a way that appeals to the senses or emotions. Socrates, with all the vagueness expected of a philosopher, said, "Art is the painting of things as they are, rather than what they appear to be." What all of those definitions share is the idea that art is, on the most basic of levels, an artist's interpretation of something through their work. The something, of course, it appears, is the aspect prompting the most debate. Does the artist have to be interpreting something deep and meaningful for that interpretation to be considered art? Do they have to be interpreting reality for it to be considered art, or can they be interpreting imagination? The manner in which they interpret it is another point of contention. Do they have to interpret it in a manner that's recognizable to the viewer as reality, or at least as the subject matter it was intended to reflect? Do they have to interpret it through a currently accepted medium? As you can see, the problem is that the bare-bones definition of art that most of us can agree on doesn't answer any of those questions, and that's why everyone is constantly in the process of arguing over it. The writers at visualartscork.com put it exceptionally well. There is no universally accepted definition of art. Although commonly used to describe something of beauty or a skill which produces an aesthetic result, there is no clear line in principle between, say, a unique piece of handmade sculpture and a mass-produced but visually attractive item. We might say that art requires thought, some kind of creative impulse. But this raises more questions. For example, how much thought is required? If someone flings paint at a canvas, hoping by this action to create a work of art, does the result automatically constitute art? Even the notion of beauty raises obvious questions. If I think my kid sister's unmade bed constitutes something beautiful or aesthetically pleasing, does that make it art? If not, does its status change if a million people happen to agree with me, but my kid sister thinks it's just a pile of clothes? All of this was, effectively, a very long-winded way of saying that people are shitting on art styles and mediums because they don't meet their standards for what defines real art, all the while failing to provide a quantifiable and unilaterally agreed upon definition at all, because it's impossible to. But where does that leave us? Unfortunately, on a fundamental level, it leaves us where we normally end up on this channel, with the knowledge that there's no one single black and white answer to a question that we're all aggressively seeking to resolve. But now that we've gone over why art purists are so intent on policing what is and isn't real art, art, let's take a brief moment to go over why so many of them target anime and comic styles of it in particular. Specifically, in the case of high school or even post-secondary art teachers aggressively insulting anime art, I feel like that in particular is a more nuanced issue than it's being given credit for. I don't think these teachers are being deliberately malicious or mean, although I'll concede that some of them are probably approaching the issue with the perspective of the Simpsons newspaper article Old Man Shakes Fist at Cloud, and reprimanding these kids these days with their newfangled animes and their comic strips. In my opinion, these teachers do, for the most part, mean well. I think a lot of them believe in the very valid notion that in order to make good stylized art, you should learn the fundamentals of realism first, so that you know how to emphasize and exaggerate certain aspects to fit more stylized formats accurately rather than incorrectly. I agree wholeheartedly with that, but there are two problems with the way they go about teaching it. One, that high school students drawing anime are probably not trying to do so professionally, at least not yet, and they shouldn't be insulted or reprimanded for drawing anime before realism on the basis of, you can't improve that way, because improvement isn't their goal. They're having fun. If they're refusing to do assignments that are based in realism or are doing something else that might be counterproductive in terms of actual course material, that's another thing entirely, because the curriculum is there for a reason, and whether they're there to improve or not, they are still taking that class, and they do still have to do certain things in order to finish it. But some teachers will give students the freedom to pick their subject matter on some projects and then still criticize them for drawing anime-style work, which is not cool. The second problem is that a lot of these teachers aren't actually saying, learn the fundamentals first, learn stylizing second. They're saying, this particular form of stylized art isn't legitimate, stop drawing it, which is both untrue and potentially capable of doing real harm to the creativity and passion of young aspiring artists. Some art teachers have also used the following arguments to denounce anime art: that it's simpler and easier to replicate than realism, and therefore does not help you grow as an artist to draw or study, and that because all anime art is the same, it stops young artists and students from developing their own individual styles. I think both of those points are horseshit. I was drawing photorealistic dogs when I was 9, and then drawing anime art that looked like someone paper shredded a picture of Inuyasha and then tried to tape it back together when I was 12. Different artists find different subject matter easy or difficult, often in large part because of the amount of experience they have drawing it. And I don't even understand how someone could not find the second point hypocritical. All anime art is the same, so drawing it prevents you from developing your style, but drawing or painting realism will help you develop your style? Really? I could walk into a beginner art class of people painting a still life study of an apple and not be able to distinguish any clear style between any of them, just the same as I could with a bunch of people drawing fan art of the same anime, because it's about genre and experience. Individual style is developed over time as an artist spends more and more of it creating their work and consuming the work of others, and studying all relevant genres is integral to that process. Saying, I can't tell any of my students' anime art apart, as a bad thing, while also saying, I can't tell any of these still life apples apart, so you all did a great job on this study, is enough to show the flaws in that argument. These teachers are recognizing the importance of studying realism while also not criticizing their students for not having their own stylized manners of interpreting it yet, because they understand that style is something that comes with time, and that eventually all of those apples would be depicted more uniquely, still within the style of realism, as the artists creating them honed their skills. But they aren't applying that to anime, which is the clearest possible representation of their inherent bias against it. Art teachers, though, are not the only ones out here on their soapboxes yelling that anime art isn't real art. Artists, art critics, and art consumers are all also known to be perpetrators of this particular opinion, and they share it just as loudly. It's childish, it's for kids, it's too simplified, it all looks the same, it's easy to make, it's just an uncreative copy of everything else in the genre. It has no meaning. The first pile of reasons are easily dismissed. They're given by people who don't see the value in anything that doesn't conform to their personal idea of what art should look like. But that last reason, that's the one that interests me, because it's the common denominator shared with all of the other types of art that fall victim to this criticism too. Meaning, it seems, is something that art critics and purists weaponize against artists everywhere, claiming that for art to have value or be considered real, it has to have a deeper meaning. Ask them to tell you what constitutes a deeper meaning, though, and most of them will struggle, because the same people who will look at Starry Night and call it a masterpiece will look at Miyazaki's work and dismiss it as meaningless, despite their own failing to actually discern objective meaning from either. But you ask them, what's the meaning behind Starry Night, beyond it being Van Gogh's view of the night sky? And they'll tell you, the meaning is in the piece's ability to show us the way that he viewed it, which is so different and unique compared to the way that we may ourselves view it. But if you then say, well, this is how Miyazaki viewed this field of flowers, or this temple, or this river, and it's different and unique compared to the way that you view it, most of them will fail to give you a plausible reason why that's different. Because meaning in art is something that cannot possibly be quantified. How can we possibly discern what gives a piece meaning, or how much meaning it has to have in order to be considered real art? If you were to put two portraits of the same person side by side, one being a traditional oil painting and one being an anime-style depiction, most art purists would immediately demean the anime piece as meaningless, despite both pieces having literally the exact same meaning, or lack thereof. They're just depicting a person. Part of this is due to the inherent pretentiousness of the art world. As Oscar Wilde put it, the cynic is the one who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing, and that appears to be the case for the majority of these critics. They'll look at the oil painting and, based on both their subconscious preconceptions and their learned knowledge and understanding of what is artistically valuable, they'll then consider it to be more valid and real as art, because they'll inherently associate it with work that's worth a lot monetarily. It's a bias that's difficult to avoid, of course, but it seems that in a lot of cases there's no effort made to avoid it at all. Many of these critics are well aware of it and simply believe that it's pertinent to judge art's quality based on how much it could be worth. And yet, historically, art having high commercial value has also been, at times, considered to be detrimental to its meaning. For example, Andy Warhol. He was an artist who found immense success creating commercial art, and, to an extent, forcing people to view commercial art as having more artistic value of its own merit than it ever had before. But he spent his whole life fighting to be seen by high art circles as a serious artist. And as Klaus Honnef says in his book Warhol, in spite of his growing success in the world of advertising and glitter, he still wanted to be recognized as an artist, as a pure artist, whose pictures would stand as a monument to himself, and would increase or even exceed the value of the goods he portrayed. It is a well-known fact that Warhol used to hide his commercial paintings when visited by art collectors. For even in New York in the 1950s, commercial art stood for bad taste, routine, mass production, and mechanization. Warhol was probably aware of this in the early stages of his success, but even after his breakthrough as a true artist, he maintained a separate studio for his commercial work next door to his creative studio. Fundamentally, Warhol's work wasn't all that different from anime. It was quite straightforward in what it was depicting, and the meaning behind it was not the priority so much as the manner in which it was depicted. The aesthetic value was considered first and foremost, which was a large part of the reason that fine art collectors and critics were so quick to demean his work as meaningless and uncreative. And just as Warhol was known as the Campbell Soup guy as a result, and not the guy who did an entire series based on dark and thought-provoking subject matter, like his interpretations of convicted criminals or electric chairs, anime artists are known for uwu cutesy schoolgirls and not masterpieces like the art of Howl's Moving Castle. But that sentiment right there, that's the thing that I feel is so complicated and conflicting here. Warhol's work of Campbell soup cans should not need to be redeemed by the fact that he also created work with deeper meaning. An anime artist who draws a lot of Hatsune Miku should not need to be redeemed by the fact that they can also create gorgeous landscapes or compelling narratives. Both types of work should, in my opinion, be seen as artistically valid and valuable. And I'm not saying you have to like both types equally. If you love Warhol's Most Wanted Man No. 6 piece and have no interest in his Heinz tomato ketchup box because you find meaning in one and not the other, that is entirely your prerogative and you're right. But you shouldn't be able to say that one is art and not the other, or that Warhol is a legitimate artist because of Most Wanted Man No. 6 and despite Heinz tomato ketchup box. On that note, it's also worth mentioning that meaning itself in art is the subject of some debate. If art needs to have meaning to be real, then what about cases where the artists themselves intended to depict no deeper meaning when creating their work, but their audience did interpret meaning from it nonetheless? Is it the creation or the reception of the art that matters most? Once again, these are questions without concrete answers, and that in and of itself should tell us how little ground art purists actually have to stand on when they claim they know what makes art real or not. Personally, I don't believe that art should have to have meaning to be considered real. I think a lot of that stems from the misguided idea that an artist needs to be suffering or sad to create real, authentic, genuine work. It's something that has, historically, led to a lot of artists being glorified for their mental illness and told, either alive or posthumously, that their work was better because it depicted their pain. Because art depicting something that elicits an emotional response in a viewer is deemed as more compelling, more provocative, more stimulating, and more valuable. And while I don't fully agree with that, I can at least see where it's coming from. The ability of a work of art to make a human being feel something that they otherwise would not have felt is not without value, and it is undeniably impressive. But not only do I not think it has to be able to do so to be considered real art, I also don't think the genre or style in which it's created decides whether or not it's capable of doing so. It's easy to say anime art doesn't convey deeper meaning while looking at the cover of a shoujo romance manga, but what about when looking at the Sun Project? It's a 4-person art collaboration fronted by Mimi N and is devoted to illustrating social issues, depression, loneliness, and other hard-hitting problems and experiences, all in an anime style. And if you look at these pieces of art, you will feel something and it'll probably hurt. So I don't understand how people can say that anime art can't have meaning, because even if I were to agree that art needed meaning to be considered real, I still wouldn't agree that that meant anime was automatically not real, because the style does not preclude the meaning. My traditional, realistic paintings of flowers are taken much more seriously in fine art circles, but the pieces that I've used to convey the most meaning have been done in an anime style. And doesn't that say enough about how the art community really views the significance of meaning in art? But all of that said, intellectualizing the issue doesn't necessarily stop us from emotionally experiencing it in an entirely different way. I know on a conscious level that my anime-style art is as artistically valid as my realistic work. But it doesn't change that when I tell strangers who ask what I do, that I'm an artist and then they want to see my work, I show them my traditional paintings, because I know that's what they'll find more impressive and legitimate, and I want to be taken seriously. I know, logically speaking, that at least as far as my own opinion is concerned, my art doesn't need to have meaning to be real, but I still feel like the work that I do in my art journal, expressing complex thoughts and feelings, is the work that I should be more proud of, the work that makes me a real artist, compared to the fan art or cute anime girls that I post on my Instagram. Knowing these things doesn't make me any less insecure about my art. I completely understand why Andy Warhol struggled so deeply with this, and why he so desperately wanted his personal work to be seen and valued more than his commercial work. Not because I agree with him and think that his commercial work was less valuable, but because I relate to the painful, agonizing, lifelong struggle that results from the internal battle every artist fights just to be able to take pride in their work, especially through the lens of how they know society will view it. It hurts me when someone asks what kind of art I make. I tell them, oh, anime and comic style stuff mostly. And their immediate response is, oh. And I can see them lose respect for my work and my career. And no amount of rationalization can really change that. It's something that all artists in fields that are looked down on are gonna have to deal with. And I can offer nothing more significant as consolation than, same dude, and I'm here for you. This whole community is, so reach out and let them build you up more than others can put you down. Ultimately, all of this brings me back to my original question. If we can't objectively define art beyond the most basic of criteria, is there any merit to trying to do so anyway? I understand the desire, I do. I am very much the kind of person who overthinks every aspect of everything until I feel I have the highest possible understanding of it. And I absolutely see the appeal of being able to establish more conclusive parameters when it comes to what is and isn't art. I would like to be able to say that that banana duct taped to a wall in an art gallery shouldn't have sold for $120,000, and give some quantifiable reason why not. But at the end of the day, someone paid that much for it because they thought it was worth that. And regardless of their reasons, why should my failure to see it as art mean it isn't? Someone paid that amount of money because they thought it was, and by way of that alone, wasn't it? I guess what I'm asking is, what we as an art community really stand to gain from restricting the definition of real art. Best case scenario, we arrive at a conclusive definition of art that excludes certain mediums or genres in the process, which doesn't bring us anything good or valuable other than the definition itself, but does exclude and alienate artists who are trying something new or different. Worst case scenario, we over-police what is and isn't real art so much that the community's creativity is thoroughly stifled. No one tries anything new or experimental, and artists everywhere are miserable and hesitant to share their work for fear that the public will see it as not real and insult it. I just think that attempting to limit the definition of real art can only really do harm with very little payoff to justify it or balance it out. I would rather just let artists and art lovers make those definitions for themselves based on their views and experiences, instead of fighting each other about it in an attempt to reach some impossible, intangible conclusion. I know that I just said, for all intents and purposes, that if I can't say what isn't art, I also can't say what is art, which means that I probably shouldn't be asserting with the confidence that I am that anime is, which is fair. But what I mean in conclusion, I suppose, is that people who think anime is real art are valid. People who think it isn't are valid. People who feel that they have the authority to share that opinion as if it's a fact and police what art is and isn't real based on it are not valid. And I would rather err on the side of being too inclusive of what is art than the side of being too gatekeepy about what isn't. And that brings me to the end of the video. Those are all just my opinions, and as a result, I would love to hear yours in the comments to both expand my perspective and further the discussion. Do you think anime is real art? What even makes art real art to you? What value does meaning have when it comes to that differentiation? Please let me know, because while I don't answer comments often anymore for a multitude of reasons, I do read them all, and I find this topic particularly fascinating. Before I end the video though, contest updates. This month's contest theme was summer, and as always, the entries were gorgeous. They really made me nostalgic for the good old days when I could leave my house and experience summer. It was actually kind of comforting to live vicariously through the scenarios they depicted, because seeing how all of these different artists visually defined the word summer so beautifully was almost like flipping through an art book of their experiences. I'm so amazed by the work that everyone submitted, as always, and I'm so happy to congratulate Amo Reads on Instagram for winning first place with this exceptional piece that aggressively makes me want both boba and a trip to California, and Layshell Digital on Instagram for winning second place with this heartwarming piece that takes me back to the warm childhood vibes of enjoying the beach with your family. Thank you to both of you for submitting your fantastic work, and congratulations again. Unfortunately, due to a multitude of circumstances, August's contest was officially the last of them, at least for the time being. The biggest two reasons were that 1, people were concerned that community vote was unfair because artists with big followings could just get those followings to give them more votes than their competitors. As a result, I did a poll asking if you guys would prefer that I judge it myself, and while the majority did vote for my personal judgment, there were an exceptional number of comments saying that neither option really worked for them. They suggested to have a jury of fellow artists judge it, or to make a whole selection of criteria to vote on, with multiple winners based on that, or to have a community vote winner and a personal choice winner, or to write a code that forces all entries to be anonymous, and a lot of similar suggestions. They were all really good ideas, but none of them took into consideration that I work 80 hours a week minimum on my channel, and I just don't have the time to be devoting to thorough criteria-based judgment or managing a panel of artist judges. I also usually only have one prize to offer, which means I can't offer multiple based on different categories, and I also can't code for shit. All of this meant that no one could agree on a fair solution that I could actually provide. The other reason was that the site I was using to host the contests was charging me $70 a month, and there are no cheaper alternatives that allow the things I need. So given that that's $70 just to run the contest and another $100 to ship the prize, I can't afford it. All of that in mind, I'm really sorry. I did try to find every possible solution here, but at the moment, it's just no longer feasible for me to continue running these contests. Instead, I'm gonna go back to tablet giveaways. They're not as much fun, but they still let me give one of you guys an awesome tablet every month, so that's something. As per my old rules, which are more than open to new suggestions for next month, please comment "I am not to be truffled with" on this video for a chance to win an XP Pen Deco MW drawing tablet, the same as last month's first place prize, linked in the description. The winner will be determined by a random number generator and contacted on October 1st, either via a response to their original comment on YouTube or via any social media account they include in their comment as a preferred point of contact, at which point they will have 72 hours to respond and claim their prize before it is then redrawn and offered to another winner. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and special thank you as always to channel members Cafe Soleil, Joseph Solomon, Unknown Code, Abyss Reborn, Dolph, and Lucian Izapa, as well as patrons Batman, Kyle Lowe, Blue Swanson, This Is Totally My Name, Unity, Cora Fear, Jamisha Walker, Jason Oliphant, and Shirome Artiste for their support. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please leave a like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you in my next one. Hey guys, it's Celestia, and today's video actually isn't the main one that I planned for this week. That one is still coming on Sunday or Monday, don't worry, and it'll also have this month's contest updates. This one, however, is just gonna be a quick update or rundown on a situation that's got artists everywhere thoroughly and rightfully enraged. Which is basically to say that Clip Studio Paint did something dumb, so you get 2 videos this week. If you're an artist and you're somehow unfamiliar with the software, Clip Studio Paint is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, digital art softwares out there, especially amongst manga artists, and rivals Photoshop in terms of prevalence in industry use. In fact, debatably, one of the biggest reasons that it did rival Photoshop quite so consistently and closely was that unlike all Adobe products, it was not a subscription-based service. You have to pay $25 a month for Photoshop. With Clip Studio Paint, up until recently, you just had to make one single $50 purchase or $219 purchase for the Pro version. And you would have that software forever, with unlimited and indefinite access to all of the updates and new features added in the future, which as of right now totals over 80 completely free upgrades that have been made available for the original product. For a lot of artists, that was a no-brainer. You get this incredible software that professional artists everywhere swear by, and instead of paying $300 a year for something like Photoshop, you can either pay $50 or $219 now and never worry about it again. For this reason, a large portion of the art community considered Celsius, the makers of Clip Studio Paint, to be one of the good guys. A company that had artists' backs and actually cared to make a good product that people could both afford and rely on. As of August 22nd, 2022, that changed pretty aggressively. Because see, while in April of 2022, Clip Studio Paint did start offering monthly usage subscription plans for its software as an alternative to a one-time purchase, they have now announced that they will, for all intents and purposes, be making that subscription plan mandatory. The exact nature of their method for making it mandatory is a little more complex than one might think though, which is in and of itself something they're facing scrutiny for. Their new payment system literally needs a flow chart to be able to explain itself, and while that's not necessarily unheard of in terms of monthly subscriptions for software, some are arguing that if you need a flowchart for people to understand where their money is going and why, compared to your previous system, it's probably too unnecessarily complicated. I personally find their inclusion of this chart informative and helpful, and I feel like it's a necessary evil for any kind of monthly payment plan, but the bigger problem is that they're forcing people into a monthly payment plan at all. Now, to be clear, there is still a one-time purchase option. It's just that the nature of it has very shadily changed. That's because this update comes alongside the announcement that in the first half of 2023, Celsius will be releasing a 2.0 version of Clip Studio Paint, presumably with brand new features and additions, although they have confirmed that there are currently no planned changes to the existing features or UI. And while that's exciting, it also means that as soon as 2022 is over, they will no longer be providing updates for version 1, the one that artists everywhere are currently using and relying on. Basically, they said, we'll update this forever when they sold it to people, and now they're saying, we'll update it for a few more months. They have nonetheless confirmed that current owners of version 1 software will be able to continue to use it without any need for a monthly payment, but they've also stipulated that you will be able to use it forever, provided it works on your device. Which is effectively to say that because they're no longer updating it, but the operating systems running it will continue to update, there will eventually come a point where the operating systems can no longer run it without being updated to match their requirements. And this software that was once touted as yours forever and future-proof will be rendered thoroughly obsolete, and we really have no way of even knowing when. Their Q&A elaborates further on this by saying that the perpetual version, version 1, will continue to receive bug fixes and stability updates, presumably to help prevent that eventual obsolescence for as long as possible. But it still clarifies that you are free to use version 1 as long as you like, provided your device and OS can run it. Basically, we'll keep providing bug fixes, but here's an out for us in case those bug fixes and stability updates aren't enough to keep our software functional on your ever-updating OS. They also mentioned that they plan to release a version 3 in the future, after the release of version 2 in 2023. And once that version is out, version 1 will no longer even receive stability updates. But that's only part of the problem. The other part is that if you want version 2 at all, there are stipulations. As I mentioned, to my understanding, you can still buy it via one-time purchase, and have that perpetual license to have and hold in your loving arms as long as you want. But if you want absolutely any of the updates that come to it to improve and stabilize it in the future, you need an update pass. They've confirmed that the monthly price for that pass will be less than the monthly usage plan, which is currently $5 a month, but they haven't confirmed how much less it'll be. To many, though, the actual price of that update pass isn't the concern. The problem is that artists will now have to pay just to have an up-to-date version of the software they purchased, which makes it effectively pointless to get the perpetual license one-time purchase at all, because based on that, it would make more sense to just get the monthly usage plan and have those updates included. The real kicker here is that if you own a perpetual license for version 2 and you get an update pass, you'll only be able to use and have those updates for as long as you have the pass. If it lapses or you cancel it, you'll be reverted back to the base original version 2, even if you've been paying however much a month just for the right to use 2.3 or whatever you've gotten to. So really, everything about the way they've framed this is saying, we'll placate you and let you get a perpetual license if you want it, but you'll have to pay extra if you want everything subscription-based users are getting for free, so why would you get it when you could just get a subscription? They're trying to corner artists into switching, because compared to the alternative, it does make more sense to. You kind of have to wonder if what they did with the iPad version was their way of subtly manipulating us into being prepared for this. Like, the iPad never got a one-time purchase option. If you want to use CSP on an iPad, you have to do so via monthly subscription, and that has, to my knowledge, always been the case since it was released there. And while that faced its own share of scrutiny and artists demanding a one-time purchase option be made available, a lot of artists did effectively take the L and sign up for the subscription anyway. And those iPad users, as well as anyone currently on a subscription plan, are now essentially facing no change at all. They'll get version 2 and all of its updates with the plan they already have with no problems, and they'll eventually get version 3 too. It's almost like they said, look how much more convenient this is on a small scale to get people on board in preparation for announcing, by the way, that's how it is for all our software now. But look how easy it is for the iPad users. It's not so bad, right? That might be a little tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist of me, but it would have been a smart marketing move. Now, all of that said, none of this is unheard of for subscription-based software. All of this is pretty standard, albeit a little convoluted, and is generally how most similar models tend to work. The problem people are having with it is that Clip Studio Paint sold itself to artists around the world as the one major software that would never use this model to begin with. It's received praise for years for being an alternative to Adobe that's actually affordable and doesn't gouge people with monthly fees. And the backlash they're receiving from artists saying, this was the one thing that set you apart from Adobe, and now that you're no different, we're just gonna either keep using our base version 1 and not indulge any of this garbage with version 2, or we're gonna find another software altogether. And on a fundamental level, I agree with them. Financially speaking, CSP is still much cheaper than Adobe. So I don't think that people saying that now they're exactly the same and equally unattainable are being at all reasonable. But I do understand that it's coming less from a place of money and more from a place of betrayal. People bought this software and trusted this company not to use a model that's designed to gouge customers. And they've turned around and done that anyway. And if artists are choosing not to support them anymore on that basis alone, I completely understand. But I do think that there is another side to this that isn't being considered, largely because people are still too hurt and angry to be willing to see it. Clip Studio Paint is an industry leader of digital art software, and they were selling it with a business model that can't possibly have been profitable enough for them to actually afford to provide that constant, indefinite support while still making much money at all. If they want to make better software with stronger features, they need to be able to make more money to be able to afford to. And it's not like they're not trying to make this transition as smooth or affordable as possible either. Their rates for subscriptions are not high or expensive, especially compared to Adobe, and they're clearly making an effort to at least try to please every group of people here. People calling them a malicious, money-grabbing Adobe clone are not, in my opinion, being fair, and are either intentionally or unintentionally interpreting their actions in bad faith. As far as I can see and understand, this choice was made simply because they needed to be able to make enough money to keep creating and delivering the best software and support possible, and they are doing their best to keep it as accessible as they can within the confines of this new model. If it were a brand new software being released with these prices and this subscription-based model, I thoroughly believe that artists would be considering it a promising option, but it's because it's Clip Studio Paint that's switching to it from something that was much better for artists that's making it so unacceptable. That said, their intentions and implementation only go so far when context is considered. And the context is that they did this poorly. Number one, they clearly failed to consider that they built their brand on the trust they built amongst artists that they would maintain their status as an alternative to subscription-based software. And they clearly didn't realize just how much more that aspect mattered to its users than any other feature of their program. As a result of that failure, they've lost both trust and support in much larger numbers than I imagined they anticipated. Number two, they didn't even figure out their own pricing before announcing this. I don't think this update would have been well received even if artists did know how much they should expect to be paying based on it. But I think it would have softened the blow if they had the foresight to establish that first and then say, well, the update pass is only 99 cents or $2 or whatever else, because the low amount might have placated some artists and at least given them some defensibility against accusations of corporate money grabbing. Instead, they said, we don't know how much we'll be charging you, but we will be charging you. And they had to have known that that wouldn't go over well. Finally, number 3, at least in my opinion, they made the new payment model both unnecessarily complicated and as far from user-friendly as they could have. As far as I'm concerned, CSP, if you're gonna switch to subscription-based, switch to subscription-based. Don't give artists the illusion that they can still make a one-time purchase and have that purchase actually have the value that it's supposed to, the value that it used to have. As it stands, if artists want to have a regularly updated program, they have to pay monthly. So they've been pushed into a corner where the only option that really makes sense as a result is to just not buy that one-time perpetual license and switch to subbing. And if you're gonna do that to them, you may as well just not give the option of a one-time purchase at all, because it has so much less value, and was clearly intended to have that much less value to incentivize people to switch to subscribing. Just switch your model and be done with it. You're not gonna please everyone either way, and this desperate attempt to do so anyway is just serving to unnecessarily confuse people or make them angrier. Conversely, if they're adamant about maintaining one-time purchases as an option, there are still a litany of other ways they could have gone about this, rather than implementing an update pass. They could have given people the option to buy updates and features as they came out, so that they could at least get to keep them, allowing them to make more money and still allow some semblance of a real alternative to subscriptions. They could have added the option to buy an expanded library of resources or cloud-based storage that would otherwise only be available to subscription holders. They could have let us pay to use experimental, new, early access features. They could have raised the price of the one-time purchase itself, which people everywhere are saying they would have been fine with. There were plenty of alternatives to adding an update pass, and I really do think it was a pretty bad move to not consider those. At the end of the day, I don't know how much I actually think this is going to change anything for artists. I think a lot of people will choose not to get versions 2 or 3 and stick with the original version for as long as possible. I think a lot of other users are already using the subscription option and will see very little change, and I think a lot of people on Twitter are blowing out of proportion how much this is really going to impact Clip Studio Paint as a result. I don't think they're going to lose their entire user base, nor do I think they should. They're still making a quality program and doing their best to keep it affordable, and just because they made what is largely being reasonably viewed as a scummy choice doesn't mean we should just boycott them altogether, at least in my opinion. I also don't think people will anyway, because there's still an industry leader offering one of the best pieces of software at the lowest price. Either way, I still think, regardless, we should just let companies learn and tell them why we find their actions unacceptable. If they won't learn, find alternatives and stop supporting them. But attacking them as being money-grabbing, capitalistic corporate scum that are now on Adobe's level seems both unfair and counterproductive to me. Criticize them, don't demonize or attack them. It's also worth mentioning that they did tweet an update on the situation today as of recording this, or September 2nd for literally all of you that will be watching this at least a day later, saying the following: "We've received a lot of feedback and are taking note of your comments. We will share any further announcements with you here. We would like to clarify some points. 1. A one-time purchase option will remain after version 2. 2. Version 1 users can continue using the app and services at no extra cost. 3. Bug fixes will be free of charge for version 1 users until the release of version 3. 4. You will not need the update pass to use the app." On the surface, that's basically just them saying, "We hear that you're angry. Please allow us to tell you all of this information you already knew because we aren't changing anything." But they did say that they'll share any further announcements in that thread, and they did claim that they're listening, which implies that there are further announcements to be had. So let's at least give them a chance to hear us when we explain why this isn't what anyone wants, because they've at least suggested that they're willing to hear our criticisms and implement changes. And please be as respectful as possible when you give those criticisms too. Anyway, hopefully this little recap was at least relatively helpful and informative, and thank you for watching. Special thank you as always to channel members Cafe Soleil, Joseph Solomon, Unknown Code, Abyss Reborn, Dolph, and Lucian is Appa, as well as patrons Batman, Kyle Lowe, Blue Swanson, This Is Totally My Name, Unity, Cora Fear, Jamisha Walker, and Shirome Artiste for their support. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please leave a like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you in my next one.
Hey guys, it's Celestia, and I'm really excited for today's video. I've got a lot of- how did I fuck it up in 8 seconds? That takes skill, or a serious lack of it. Webtoon's questionable choice of- Where of what- No intention of diminish- Wait, hold on.
on. Okay, I just can't read it. Okay, let me try that again. Crater, fuck. To selling the, wait, did I say Cheetos before? Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna leave it. I'll correct it with text after. It's fine if I did. Sorry. It's just so funny. And then there's Cheetos cup and anyway. Step 1. Fuck. Fuck. Can't talk. I hate it here. I hate it here. Okay. But that doesn't tell me fuck. That doesn't tell me fuck. Good start. Any attachment. Wow. Simply due to the competitive. Why did I stop myself? My brain has a block right now. Oh my god. Okay. Competitive. I'm saying that right? You can't respond to me. You can't hear me. Competitive. Competitive. Am I having a stroke? Okay. Another example of ageism towards. Oh, I got an email. So stems from people generalizing young words. They're hard. And the question of, is this, fuck, I can't say words, it's a struggle, I'm struggling. And the question of, I can't, I've already fucked it up a third time. Okay. I can do it now, I believe in me. Hopefully the mic isn't picking up my shitty upstairs neighbor, oh my god. The fact that while strawberry, fuck, that's hard to say. So in conclusion, yes, fuck, already fucked it up. Good start, okay. For example, if it's a shipped fuck. They pause it while it can, fuck, wow, by the fuck. But I also understand that since the fuck, it's a hard word. My chair squeaked, I have to do that again. Fuck, of course it did. We replace the celebrities, influers, wow. Ones, wait, fuck, okay. Just fucking fuck. Today is a day. Alright. Oh wait, I fucked that up. And my alarm's going off. Good. Great start. That's fuck. Like, I can't. I'm gonna try that again. I'm very passionate about titties, okay? Then you adjust the opacity. It's opacity. Ugh, I'm so tired. You can find all of that linked in the description is too hard of a word. But for the most part, my first-hand experiences with Zian's word generally fuck, I fucked it up. I'm fucking goddamn it. I'm so hungry. And while it took like 6 months work of fuck. And while it took like 6 months worth, I can't with the words. Not today with the words. Or ever, really, historically. I will say that beyond the initial, that's a new one. In which I did 2 years worth of Inktober, I need help. Why the fuck is that bird so loud? Shut up. So fucking rude. I hope that didn't get picked up. People who don't like the more corporate form that zines have. Fuck. So hungry. Fuck. That sentence. Nope. That's wrong. But just like it enabled and worsened I didn't even fuck that up. I just, once again, preemptively assumed I would. Okay. Isn't real art. Or fuck. God. Sentences are hard. Especially when I write them so poorly. Having a responsibility to fuck. I'm gonna have to start that whole thing over, and there were so many big words. God damn it. Next, in terms of see, this is what I mean. God damn it. Next, in terms of over-sexualized, yeah, help me. First of all, the lack of realism and overly sexually, fuck, wow, that died. Okay. I fucking hate my life. Excuse me. I will deal with you in a minute, washing machine. Also, in fairness, that's only because the tree and the general composition are vaguely redeemable. Fuck. Now, fuck, I already fucked it up. 3 words in, okay. So we're gonna go through it character by character, because this piece is a fuck, I can't say words, it's too cold, my mouth is cold. How is it so long? Oh, you bitch. I put you on silent. Sorry. Once again, let me take a moment to draw you guys a diagram of what her why can't I say foot? I'm gonna fucking die. I remember that I fuck. I remember that I fuck. Okay. I remember that I tried something new with, and the voice crack. My life is falling apart. Which is inherently the problem with the mental fuck. The mental hair. Good. My best friend. Fuck you, man. Excuse me. We all kind of assumed that he would actually try to fuck. Why? Why was that a hard word for me to say? Which are largely about two coworkers who visit. I can talk. I can do it. I believe in me. And that professionally, I should be trying twice as hard to prove myself. And more importantly, oh my god, I fucked it up again. Please end me. Okay. And that professionally, I should be trying twice as hard to try to prove myself. Fuck. Oh my god, I did it again. Help me. Oh no. It can be really hard to see your art objectively and without the bias of your own perception of it. And hearing the feedback of a neutral party can help pretty significantly when it comes to fighting the cycle of self-hatred and self-deprecation that imposter syndrome can help cause. God, that's a long sentence. I just combined like 3 sentences. I can't read. I'm so tired. For the sake of proving, what did I do to that sentence? Okay. But nonetheless, the goal of this video in particular is to reflect on everything that's gone down in the art CC and I can't read. And ignoring smaller issues. Did I say issues right? Let's just hope I did. As well as an example of wow, this is a struggle. And that brings me to the final main problem regarding cancel culture, which is the inherent maliciousness. Oh, it should be malice. Oh, okay, hold on. Bad scripting. If taking commissions is... Oh, fuck. Wow, I'm already fucking up this much. That does not bode well for the video. Passive income is income that's generated without requiring you to actively... fuck. Passive income is income that's generated without How did I fuck it up a second time? I heard my cat. That's what it fucking is. I know she's up to no good. I know it. Ultimately, starting your channel is going to mean encountering problems and dilemmas that you didn't plan on. For no matter... Wait. Oh, I fucked it. Oh, I can't read. I'm illiterate. That's fine. I'm working on my own stills right now. There was supposed to be a whole sentence after that, and my mind just stopped working. Okay. Before I move on to the next category... I'm too gay. Insert that word into everything. Okay. Moving on, though, let's start with the active income options, because they're usually... Oh, what? How did I fuck that up? I just stopped functioning. Okay. Oh, I fucked up the script, that's why I can't say it. Having an aneurysm. And selling commissions means that bottom line... Oh, I fucked that script up, too. God, I need to sleep more. Regardless, the for-profit option presents a pretty good opportunity to fuck. Well, hopefully not to fuck. Okay. You wouldn't go to a fuck. Wouldn't go to a McFuck. I fucking hope not. Okay. The employer is not gonna care about your voice acting. Wow, that voice cracked. Hold on, my voice cracked. Which had also- oh my god, that voice cracked. Ow. Hey, Cheddar, please leave. Hey. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I have to keep the office door open right now, and that means cats. Cheddar, silence, please. Cheddar. And as I've grown as an artist, I've become increasingly aware of just- oh my god, that bus was so loud. Cheddar, get out of the office! Cheddar, do you have to murr while you do everything? Just all of it? Hopefully that's not being picked up in the background, as precious as it is. And it is very precious. Cheddar? Sir? Please leave. Thank you. Cheddar! He just yells. He walks around and he yells. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please leave a like and subscribe if you did. Fuck, I fucked it up. I've said that sentence so many times and I still fucked it up. God damn it. Okay. Fuck. Hey guys, it's Celestia, and because life is depressing and I wanted something to laugh about, and also because you guys requested it, today we're going back to r/delusional artists. When I did the first video, I asked if you guys wanted me to make it a series, and since the response was largely a resounding yes, I've been compiling months worth of gems to show you in today's part 2, which will inevitably continue in another couple months. But before I share all of my unique finds with you, let me thank today's sponsor. I know some of you guys hate these and are also inexplicably unable to skip to the timestamps I put on screen without yelling at me in the comments, so I'll try to keep it shorter, and here's the timestamp anyway for those of you who are kindly willing to skip to it if you're not interested. Now, you guys might remember Wingfox from multiple prior videos of mine that they sponsored, and I'll link the most recent one in the card on screen because I go into a lot more detail about why I find their platform so valuable compared to their competitors in that one. But basically, they're an online learning platform dedicated to art of any and all kinds, and they offer a plethora of detailed courses taught by industry leaders with hours upon hours of content in each one. Like, mind-blowingly so. They've allowed me to try out yet another one this month called Drawing the Human Figure with Basic Shapes, and it's one that I would recommend to beginners and experts alike, especially those of you who struggle to draw anything outside of your preferred subject matter or comfort zone, because it basically breaks down every aspect of art into easily understood and replicated aspects. Essentially, the course explains that drawing parts of your art exclusively by looking at a 2D reference means that if you need to draw it at a different angle or perspective, you'll need to find a whole new reference. But by breaking down anything from an item to the human form into basic 3D shapes, you can gain a better understanding of how it looks and why it looks that way, subsequently allowing you to draw it from any angle. You know how when you draw something a lot, you start automatically getting better at drawing it and taking less time to do so with less reference, without really thinking about it? That's at least partially because your brain starts to recognize the shapes that make up that thing and puts them together more naturally and accurately. This course will teach you how to do that for anything, not just the things you're good at, and I cannot recommend it enough. Thank you to Wingfox for sponsoring this video, and it was a pleasure as always to get to try out another shockingly in-depth course from them, because I always feel like I've learned something tangible and new. If you'd like to go check out this course, you can get 15% off with coupon code WFF15 via the links in the description, so please look into it yourselves if you're interested. Alright, so that aside, let's get on to the shit show, because it is a shit show. For anyone who isn't familiar and doesn't feel like going back to my first video on it for context, I mean, first of all, your loss. That video is home to the likes of Doobage Bear and Cheetos Cup, and that's obviously not the kind of content you want to miss. But if that's not enough to tempt you, here's a very quick summary. r/delusional artists is a subreddit dedicated to effectively mocking either bad art that's overpriced, or most frequently, art that's both. A lot of it also happens to be a bunch of assholes taking gigantic anonymous shits on average normal art that the majority of them couldn't make themselves. And this video series is not for those posts. I'm not interested in insulting beginner artists or just any artists that haven't perfected their skills yet but are still clearly trying their best. I'm here to be fucking appalled by the audacity of some dumbass trying to sell a half-eaten can of tuna as a modern art installment for $950, and make sure that all of you have to see it too, so I don't have to suffer alone. And that's exactly what we're about to do. So prepare for art. Or at least something vaguely reminiscent of it.
If you would like to purchase this painting for $28,000, I can be contacted at ratfuckgocheckyourself.gov.
Starting strong, let me bring your
At ratfuckgocheckyourself.gov.
Starting strong, let me bring your attention to one of my favorite masterpieces that you'll be seeing today. Cheerios coasters. First of all, the first iteration of a question I'll be asking a lot in this video. How did this occur to someone as not only a piece of art, but as a lucrative business endeavor? How did someone sit down and think, God, I sure hope the condensation on my glass doesn't get on my table. I know, I'll stop it from doing so with a cereal that literally exists to be absorbent of liquid. What could go wrong? And then followed that thought up with, genius, this is something to market to the masses. Even if they're completely covered in superglue to the point that they won't absorb anything, I still don't know how they thought this was a good idea to make a coaster out of. Like, of all things, it's unstable. The singular purpose of a coaster is to keep liquid off of a damageable surface and keep a glass steady. And this does neither. I understand that this person clearly had a box of expired Cheerios and decided to try to profit off of their failure to eat it in time by cutting it up and gluing the contents together. But of all the things to make with it, coasters? And to go from the $0 value of an expired box of Cheerios to selling the remnants of it for $25 each or $75 for all of them, when half of them aren't even fully covered in Cheerios at all, Capitalism, man. I also have to acknowledge the item's description because first off, the artist says, and I quote, "I made these myself and I am proud of them." I'm sorry, is the implication here that were it not for that statement, people would have thought that these weren't handmade, but were rather mass-produced? Fuck, that's news to me. I was convinced that Bed Bath & Beyond was responsible for supergluing $5 cereal to poorly cut out circles of what I imagine to be a flipped-over Cheerios box. Thanks for the heads up. But what gets me even more is that they followed that up with "great for any occasion," and I can't even say that with a straight face while I'm looking at these coasters because I can literally only think of one occasion I would ever consider using these for, and it's to gift to like a weevil or an enemy or maybe a really hungry, desperate bird. The idea that these are as well suited to a banquet hall as they are to your living room is quite possibly the funniest fucking thing I've heard in a while. And I'm not gonna lie, I do kind of live for the image of a better world where the only coasters you see in 5-star restaurants are these. I think I would like it better. Next up, the aptly named low-budget modern abstract artwork quote painting lettering art calligraphy, selling for $360 USD with $30 shipping. And while I understand why this is on here because that's obviously ridiculous, it reminds me a lot of one of the entries in my previous r/delusional artist video. An artist was paid a lot of money to create a bunch of art and delivered a bunch of blank canvases titled "Take the Money and Run." So if the artist's goal here is to provide a similar piece of commentary on the state of the art world, that's fucking hilarious and good on them. If not, I mean good on them anyway for openly saying through the art itself that they're 100% transparently selling something that probably cost them $30 for over triple that. As always, I can only aspire to achieve that level of boldness. Now, I'm gonna have to blur this next one a little because I don't know what kind of language YouTube actually lets me show visually, even if I'm not saying it out loud, but I'm sure you can see clearly enough what the top of this artisanal coffee table says in some very expertly painted graffiti. And while it's obviously a piece of art of its own merit just based on that, I feel like the context might be missing here. It's called artisanal coffee table and not like hand-painted artisanal coffee table or alternative graffiti artisanal coffee table. And it's only going for $40, all of which suggests to me that rather than sitting down and spray painting this table as a piece of intentional art, the seller actually just found or had the table like this and is basically selling it for scrap in case someone wants to paint it or sand it down. That would definitely explain why it was inexplicably saved by 103 shoppers, because holy shit, like, yes, I would without hesitation buy this and send it to someone I hate, but I cannot imagine that 103 other actual living human beings either share my level of pettiness or just actually want to put this in their living room. Either way, I'm still so fucking curious. Like, even if that is the case, I am still desperate to know the circumstances that prompted its creation. Like, I'm personally partial to the idea that the seller just banged someone's wife or burnt down their crops or whatever the fuck else, and that person's response was to get back at them by inscribing this subtle, difficult to interpret message on their favorite table, and the seller's just trying to make back the loss rather than taking that as the artistic and aesthetic improvement that it is. This next one is much less absurd, but I love it anyway, because just so many people are rightfully calling Nintendo out for fat-shaming Pikachu and making him less chubby than he was in the early generations of Pokemon. And guys, this artist has taken matters into their own hands. And this isn't just classic chubby Pikachu, this is literal circle chonker of a Pikachu, and I would die for him. My sleep-deprived notes for this video summed up this whole section with just $6 not enough. And I stand by it, it's not. I love him. Next, we have some Bleach fan art. And I know I said we're not here to make fun of beginner artists doing their best, I don't actually know if that's what we're looking at here. I'm more inclined to believe that whoever made this is trolling, because from what I saw, it's not actually listed for sale or posted anywhere like the other posts in the sub, but is rather just a standalone image, and I